thank you. When you say rezoning schools, what does that mean?
Rezoning?
Yeah, I mean, I know what the term means, but like Cedar Bluff would come here, or?
That's an excellent question. It's actually a clarifying question. I appreciate that. So right now within the town of Farragut, all students are zoned for the town of Farragut. We are rezoning within the town of Farragut because primaries could possibly be a K through 5 and intermediate would change because if you built another elementary school. So you're shuffling students around on where they live to attend whatever school they're zoned for. Because right now we don't have a K through 5 elementary school. I appreciate that question. We have a question right here, Ms. Harrington.
Okay, so if you have a freshman academy that's currently in the intermediate school and it's hi, thank you. Okay, so if your freshman academy is in the intermediate school where it is currently, and I don't know how our freshman students, what electives or other courses outside of their academy hallway they would need access to. But have you considered how they will they be able to walk all the way to high school and will they be given time to do that?
That's an excellent question. Yes, they would. And I do want to reassure you that there is a great degree of separation for whether it's the middle school and the freshman academy or whether it's the freshman academy and the intermediate school. Mr. Schober has a term, it's called a demising wall. So basically it is a clear, distinct separation between grade levels. Yes, they would walk back and forth. I did do a little bit of research just to see how we function as a county, and 11 out of 15 of our schools, 11 out of 15 of our high schools access their classes through different campuses.
Okay, thank you.
So, are you gonna put some kind of shelter for them though, in case it's raining or something like that?
So I will tell you, until we figure out what we're going to do, we've not even explored that, but I will tell you, we have multiple campuses that, it's open to the elements. If where we can put a shelter, we would, but without even looking at the design and working with the architect, I could not tell you that.
So my question is about the freshman academy, being at the intermediate or the middle school. Will there be some renovations done to those buildings so that the science classes can be lab science classes? Because they're not here for that right now.
So there will 100% be renovations to where the labs are located. I will tell you, as a former high school principal, it would depend on what Dr. Bartlett wanted. Dr. Bartlett couldn't want all of his science classes accessed at the high school, right? And so I don't know where he'd want that, but yes, they would be renovated. If Dr. Bartlett wanted science labs within the existing intermediate / middle school, then yes, we would make those necessary renovations.
So he would remain the principal of both the freshman academy as well as the high school?
Again, I can't, that's once the decision is made, I will tell you the way that it's currently structured, most of our high schools have a freshman academy principal, and of course they have the principal for the high school. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Trent, the freshman academy principal is under the direction of the principal. Is that the executive principal? Is that accurate?
Yes.
And there is Dr. Bartlett, incognito with a hat on. I said we are friends. We are no longer friends. You owe me breakfast.
We got breakfast coming up.
It's actually scheduled next week, I
I'm
believe.
about to say, you're paying it this time.
Okay, I have two questions, but one is to piggy off the back of that. What about our students that have IEPs and special education and maybe have difficulty with walking across campus? What accommodations are we going to make sure that they have so that they can participate with their peers, but also still be participating on the campus?
I can assure you that we will take care of that. Again, with my background, that's near and dear to my heart. But one of the campuses we have now, we provide transportation, so they have access to whatever facility necessary on the campus.
And then my second question is have you considered bus transportation? Because we are already don't have enough buses and bus drivers, and kids are sitting here for over hours, waiting to get home. And now the campuses are so far spread out, and because elementary dismisses at a different time than middle and high school, and typically middle and high school are riding the same bus, how is that going to work with that?
So actually, it increases transportation. I'll let Mr. Dillingham speak to that, but it actually helps us tremendously when it comes to congestion of traffic and routes. So I'll let Mr. Dillingham speak to that.
Hi, I'm the transportation guy. So yes, we have very closely looked at transportation. So so it depends on what scenario we're talking about. But let's say that we look at option 2, where we build the middle school off campus, and so it's on Boring Road. So every bus that we have right now is combined with Farragut Middle School and Farragut High School, picking up both loads of kids. What this would transition to is something similar to what we have at Carnes. We combine most of our buses at Carnes and have middle school and high school on the same bus, but their campuses are about the same distance we'd be talking about. So essentially we start half their buses at Carnes Middle School, and then they drive to the high school and pick up, and we start the other half of the buses at Carnes High School, and they pass as they go. We think some routes are gonna have to be redesigned. We might be able to do some additional things with our routes, but we still ought to be able to, the paradigm of having middle school and high schoolers together, that's our intention, is to still operate that way. What Dr. Adams alluded to with traffic, again, in scenario 2, for example, if we move the middle school off campus, then we're looking at moving 1,400 elementary school age students at 2:45, and another 2,100 at 3:30. Currently, that's 1,000 and 3,500. So at 3:30 in particular, that's a significant reduction in the number of students who need to move from one place to another, and concurrently the reduction in the number of cars that would be on campus at that time. So what I would expect, and what our sort of traffic studies have told us, is that is still a lot of people, and that's still a lot of people trying to go to the same place at the same time. So there are going to be problems that are coming out of that, but it is going to be better than what we currently experience now. The bus line, the bus loop that's at the high school, that was one of our attempts to try to keep buses and cars separate. Obviously, middle school's got a much easier setup. But that was an attempt to try to ease traffic for buses. Once we get the buses out of the way, then that becomes more space for loading. It works pretty good, but it's not as effective as it could be. Something like this could help. If we look at some of the elementary school solutions, that changes things. The specifics of how we would approach things change with each one of the 3 options, but the bottom line is, yes, we ought to be able to provide appropriate transportation to all 3 of those schools, and the wait times, the loading, those sorts of things, that's because I don't have enough buses. And while we are taking steps, and I'm actually tonight feel better about the number of bus drivers that we have than I have in probably 40 years. We're not where we want to be, but we're moving in the right direction. None of that is sort of a separate issue from this, and none of these options are going to exacerbate the problems that currently exist.
There was a question. Oh, I'm sorry. She's next. Well, no, you can go ahead. No, take the mic out of her. No, she just, I'm just saying she's next. Okay. All right. Well, let's get it. We'll take it.
What can I say? I always cause trouble. My name is Jeannie Brakowski, and to be transparent, my husband and I have no children or grandchildren, so we have no students that will be at the schools. But this is our community, and we care about everybody. We've become very active in our community over the past several years, and one thing that has become apparent is a problem that has to do with schools, that has to do with everyday life, is the traffic. And my big concern is with a new school going in back behind Ingalls off Boring Road, and it's almost catty corner across from another school, a private school, that section of road on Kingston Pike, a couple of times, 3 times a day, many of us half-jokingly refer to it as Suicide Alley, because between the private school, the public schools, and just general traffic, it's very difficult to have any kind of safe traverse down that section of Kingston Pike. My questions are, or my concerns are, building that school there, is that gonna change one of the parental responsibility zones? Because that one road that has the traffic light, that is Kingsgate subdivision that goes across to where the Farragut Press Enterprise is. Yeah, it's Peterson Road, and I forget what the name is across the street. Village Commons. Back there, I mean, that would be an obvious place to have a connection to the school property, because there's already an intersection there with light. I would hate to see something be connected to Boring Road, because for one thing, it's a very old road, it's a very skinny road, and it's one of the problem outlets onto Kingston Pike. My concern is, I'm concerned about the education of the students, because if these are the kids that are gonna be running our world someday. We need them to have good educations, but we need them to be able to get back and forth from school alive. And we need to be able to, for them and their parents to feel like when they send them off to school, they can do it with a sense of security, that they're not gonna have to worry about kids dodging cars to get across Kingston Pike, or a school bus having to play dodgeball with a, please excuse the term, soccer mom who's in a hurry to go pick up her kid from someplace else. So I guess I'm just saying is, please talk to the community who lives in that area about the traffic issues that are already currently in play. Now, I do want to say that the private school is supposed to move their current, one of their current entrances over, and so it goes opposite, right across the street from Rustgate Boulevard in Village Green. It's supposed to be done by next summer, mid to late summer, so hopefully that'll get done, and that will help alleviate some of the problems. But we want to make sure we don't create new ones. Thank you.
All right, you said PRZ, so that comes to me. PRZs are established by board policy, and they are uniform across the board, regardless of school location, based on the type of school. So if we build an elementary school, there will be a PRZ that is 1 mile, measured on the roads. If we build a middle school, it'll be 1.5 miles measured along the roads. So as for your concerns about traffic, like I share your concerns about that stretch of Kingston Pike as well. I will say that one of the things that is attractive to me, again, as the bus guy, is that there is, we will have buses that we need to, like, coming out of Village Commons, like we would have buses that we need to turn left. So I don't want them doing that if they don't have a light. We haven't designed the school yet, we don't know what things are gonna look like. There's sort of, I think of Boring Road in 2 parts. There's sort of from Smith Road over past the name of the subdivision escapes me. The road has been widened, is improved.
Baldwin Park.
Thank you very much. So we service there. So like I know that we can serve, like buses can navigate that section of road. The other part of Boring Road looks like a lot of other roads across the county that we very technically call in my office pig paths. So like that is not going to be navigable by a bus. So like, we don't know what the school is going to look like, but there have been some discussions about perhaps like, splitting the drop-off and having some part on Boring Road, using the improved parts and other parts on the front or something like that to try to control some of that traffic. It's, again, until we know what we're building and until we design what we're building, we're not going to know exactly what that's going to look like. But we're trying to be sensitive to those things. Like we share those concerns as well. We have no desire to build a school that is going to be hard for people. Like, we want to make it as easy as possible.
And to that point, I will say we have been working very closely with Mayor Williams and his team, and welcome. I'm glad you can make it tonight. We appreciate you. And so we have worked very closely with their team. And again, it's very difficult to have robust conversations when it's hypothetical, right? So you get to chasing your tail and you look at all the different options. And so, but that is one that we have been able to have conversations about. We'll continue to have those conversations to ensure that our students are safe.
Thank you.
I have a question about, I do live in Baldwin Park, which, well, look at the school. But my question is, and I've been following it, and it seems like a very good decision that Knox County Schools has made. However, Boring Road, I understand, is currently considered a, I don't remember the term because I go to all the meetings, a damaged road, the one going down where the horses are. I mean, I drive up there because it's pretty, but it's a very narrow road. If you have two SUVs, it could be suicide. But my question is, I mean, does Knox County Schools decide this, or is this the county that's gonna decide road repair? And like, you know, if we're gonna do something going up Village, where the assisted living is, to come out on Smith Road, who decides that?
So it's a joint effort. When you talk about the drive to the school, it's a joint effort. It's Knox County Schools, it's Knox County government, it's the town of Farragut. It's a joint effort. It's not just a one entity makes a decision and we move on. It is truly a joint effort, and it's a collaborative effort.
I actually have two questions. The first is related to growth because I live out in the area off of Virtue Road that is exploding, and they are just putting as many houses as close together as they can in that area. Of the options, do all of them have the capacity to handle if we get 300 or 400 more students? Or is that something you're even kind of putting into some of this consideration?
There are two options that address the growth. The building of a new elementary school, what we did traditionally, does not address the growth for the middle school or the high school, and it may not even address the growth for the elementary school. Because keep in mind, once we start the new build of schools, we're removing portables. I'm not about the portable business, right? I want to upkeep brick and mortar. And so the two options, whether it be a middle school, whether it be an elementary, and we ensure that the freshman academy is accounted for, that does build out for potential growth.
Okay. The other question I have is related to the rezoning. So I could spit and hit the Loudoun County line. We are zoned for Farragut Middle and Farragut High School, but we got lucky and we get to drive 25 minutes over to North Shore Elementary School. That's fun. So with any of this rezoning, with expanding the elementary schools, with having the possibility of two different elementary schools, does any of that include any of that area, or is it strictly town of Farragut, and then how would that affect us, I guess, related to the middle and high school?
I don't want to speak for Mr. Dillingham, but correct me if I'm wrong. If you are currently a Farragut student and live within the town of Farragut, you would attend a Farragut school.
Okay, so we would be rezoned for elementary, because my middle and high school is zoned Farragut, but not elementary.
So I can't answer that question.
Yeah. I didn't know if when they were talking about rezoning and expanding the students, if they were including any of that area in their numbers for elementary school.
If you are currently zoned for any school within the town of Farragut, you would be attending a Farragut school.
Okay.
She doesn't, a lot of people don't understand where Farragut boundaries are. If you're south of that railroad station, over in Chodo, you're not in Farragut, you're still North Shore Elementary.
But even though we go to the
So
Farragut.
you wouldn't change for elementary, but you would change for middle and high.
Middle and high, okay, okay.
But do those numbers include the North Shore?
Got some experts. If you would like to come work for the transportation department,
I wanted to give you a little background. I'm Stephanie Thompson. I'm the PTO president at the middle school and the high school.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I went to Farragut K through 12. I think it's amazing. I went to UT and excelled in engineering because of our awesome teachers that are here and the way that we plan our schools. I'm going to read because I'm much better at that than doing a presentation. Yesterday, several of us, we invited anyone on the PTO board to met. I'm going to introduce Josta. She's also a Farragut alumni, a lawyer, and the FPS PTO president. And this is Michelle Morrow. She's the FIS PTO president and a former middle school teacher and principal. So we just wanted to show we're not just a bunch of moms. We had other attendees, and
we want to say that we're speaking for, I don't know, about 25 to 30 staff members, parents, and administration. And our number one focus is the best interests of our students. And so we kind of, I mean, traffic is a big deal, but it's not really a big deal. Like, we can figure that out later. If you want to spend a little more time in the car with your kids, that's okay. So we looked at all the options, and we would like to propose something that we're calling option 1B. So, I don't know if you can pull that back up. You know, most people, students, we don't like change, and especially those of us that have lived in Farragut our whole life. A couple years ago, it was brought up that maybe we'd be getting a new elementary school, so I think people got used to that idea. We do realize that every option has rezoning for elementary schools. It's just a fact of life. Option 1 gives us the most capacity for K through 5 at 2464 if you add it all. Right. So option 1B is we are proposing for the new build to be a K through 5 elementary school, and then option 2, the cost for that is $67 million. So if you take the difference between those two options, which is $24 million, we would like to propose to build an annex to FHS for the freshman academy. It was similar to what was approved for Hardin Valley. That way our 9th graders can stay on that campus, and they can walk to band, and they can walk to lunch, and they can walk to their electives, and not be 0.25 miles away from the band room, which is what it is because I walked in on Sunday. So if we go with option 1B, it increases capacity in every one of our current schools who are currently overcrowded. So it doesn't really deal with the middle school. So we wanted to point out a couple of things about option 2 and option 3. For those of you that can't look at, like we did the math. So if you do the new build for the middle school, it only increases the current capacity for 81 kids. And that doesn't seem like very much for 67 million. And then if you do the option for the elementary school capacity, taking the capacities, if you take the capacities for what they would be, the expected capacities, minus our current students, the difference is 43 kids. So that doesn't seem like accounting for a lot of growth.
So I do want to address that. So it's the building capacity is for 200. The difference is with elementary, the span of grade levels compared to middle school, you don't need much. And we looked at the projected numbers for Farragut, and even though you all are growing, the projected numbers show a trend downwards from like 400 to 500 class. However, we want to prepare for 500 to 600 or whatever, right? And so for middle school, it's a little different because you're looking at a small section of grade levels. I will tell you, we did consider that option before we came up with the 3 different options we had. Some of the issues with that was, number one, the study that they did that predated me. And the study basically said, do not do construction on that campus as far as a build out. And that's, when you look at doing an addition onto the high school, that was one of our biggest concerns, is that the study said, do not do an addition. A standalone building, and this is just all the lessons we're learning with new construction, the cost for a standalone building has become astronomical. And so one of the reasons we looked at, if we're going to do a standalone building, it needs to be a middle school or an elementary school. That would give us the opportunity to do renovations within the building instead of doing additions. So I 100%, again, I've told you all, this is a listening session. We're taking all the necessary input we can take, but we did look at that option. And that's one of the reasons those options didn't make it to the presentation.
What is the reasons for not adding on to the back? Because I thought, rumor is that it was part of the original high school plan to add that lane to connect the spokes in the back. So what is the reason for not adding it on?
The study.
But
This-
when was the study done?
But an annex was just approved for Hardin Valley.
Yeah, doing the same thing.
I'll say that I'm in the same boat as Dr. Adams, is that the feasibility study predates me as well.
What's
What-
the date
2021.
of that study?
2021. So, again, what we were told as a result of that study, the information that we've inherited is that the cost and the feasibility and the timeline to add to any of our existing buildings on the existing campus made new construction far more viable.
But new construction to buy new land that is unavailable in Farragut?
Well, there's no land available on any of the school sites either.
We have land at FHS that we can build on the back of.
There's that portable sit on currently.
So we take those portables down and we build on the back of it.
So, again, I hear.
I understand it predates your time, so we do a new feasibility study and we see if we can do this.
It's
Because we agree with you that the freshman academy is the way to go, it needs to be done, but we feel very strongly that we don't want our freshmen in this day and time, for safety reasons, among other reasons, to have to walk across a quarter of a mile to get to their extracurriculars.
So I'll say
Multiple
this.
times a day.
I'll say this, and I 100% hear you. A 2021 feasibility study is a very current study, right? So you're not going to get like a different result from a feasibility study. It's going to basically say the same thing. You need new construction. The question is, and I think this is where, we look at the different, like, what you all are suggesting is something the feasibility study experts have told us not to do, right? For multiple reasons, right? But I didn't make that call, the Sherwood didn't make that call, my predecessor didn't make the call. They said, do not add on or build on.
I'm not saying add on, we're saying build another building like you just approved at Hardin Valley. Like.
An addition?
Yeah,
So-
not connect two different buildings.
So Hardin Valley, and that's another thing, Mr. Sherwood can tell you, there's no excavation in Hardin Valley. Like you're literally, it's a flat plat of land and you throw it up on the back of the building and I'd probably bet say it was designed that way so it could do an addition and build out. When you get into, and it goes back to the feasibility study, that it just clearly said, do not build on to the existing building. Dr. Bartlett and I've had this conversation, and so, we've had this conversation at length. And it's one of those things where, yeah, if the feasibility study didn't tell us not to do that, it's something we would look at. But again, that's why that's not one of the proposals.
Well, I mean, how much more could it have cost? I mean, can we see the cost? What's too much money? You know what I'm saying? We're spending 66 options for option number 2, $66 million.
We can certainly look into that. Again, we look into anything. But again, even if we looked into that, I would be looking into something that a feasibility study told me not to do. So I could look into the cost, but again, I'm not an expert to do the feasibility study. But the major thing that came out of that was do not add on to your additional.
No, I just want to make it clear. Yeah, what we're saying is use option 1 as stated. And then build another building at or near FHS. Not connecting them.
Where would you build it?
There's a parking lot back there.
Oh, no, they said don't build on campus. I'm sorry, that's the confusion. The feasibility study said do not build a facility on this campus. Do not add on, do not build a facility on this campus. That's what came out of that study.
But what was the feasibility study done for? Like, what was happening in 2001? Like, we were exploring the same thing then?
Exactly. Exactly, because we were at, I can't speak for 2021, I would say were we at capacity then, Mr. Dillingham? Yes.
Alright, So I was in my current position in 2021, and while I do buses and zones, so I can speak tangentially to the feasibility study. So we hired an architect who hired civil and other engineers, and we gave them a problem. We said, we have too many kids at Farragut, what do we do about it? And so what they did is they did an intensive, it was over a year's worth of study, maybe it's 10 months, something like that. And they came back and they gave us options in the feasibility study. One of the things that they looked at was not just like, is this fiscally or like spatially possible, but it's also like the livability. So like we have 200 kids that are in portables right now. So if we build a building where the portables go, like where do those kids go? And it takes 3 years to build a building, so like where do those kids go for 3 years? And if we look at building in stages, and so we build a part of it, and we move part of those kids in, and we do this dance, that causes the greenfield construction is like the cheapest construction you can have. Like there's nothing there, you're just building a building. When you have to sequence things, that makes the cost go up exponentially. And so it was essentially, it was a question of not, it was, the recommendations were about spending money smartly. Not like, it is not physically, they weren't saying it's impossible to do any of these things. Like lots of things are possible if you give us enough time and enough money. They're saying like to get the most bang for your buck, the best thing to do is go find some property, build a new school, and then put some of the kids that are currently in the Farragut schools into that school. And so like based on the outcome of that, I mean, you know, we spent a lot of money to hire the experts to tell us what to do, so then we were following the recommendations of the experts.
So how portable are the portables? Like, could the
Not-
portables just be moved to a parking lot and I could house everybody for a few years? And there's extra parking space to FMS, kids can park there and all over, I don't know.
It's about $200,000 just to set a portable up, to move a portable and set it up.
Why?
Cost of it.
You're the right.
They have to be connected to utilities, so that's electrical, plumbing, water, it's all the things. It's not you're picking up a building and moving it, it's you're picking up a building and then you're having to reconnect utilities that are connected at its current location. And so, for years, we have done a dance of buying new units when we did not have one to relocate, and relocating them as they become available, which they don't often become available. It usually takes us doing a significant addition renovation in order to free up portables to then be relocated. But the cost to relocate them is in that $200,000 to $300,000 range, because you've got to build, you know, code compliant deck stairs and ramps to get out of that building. You've got to connect the utilities to that. It's not a matter of I have it at site A and everything's ready to go at site B and I'm just hauling a trailer over there.
Okay, thank you.
Can I shift gears here? So what if we build a new high school then instead of a middle school? If we shift everybody over, I know there's not a plan, but what if we build it up more? So like instead of 2 stories, you build 3 stories, we make it work. Everybody gets shifted, every kid gets to use the new high school. The school has like state of art stuff then, new science labs, new everything.
High school's about 120 million.
The other thing is, the building can grow vertically, but there are things that go with a high school site that the ball field, there's considerably more parking at high school. The piece of property that we're purchasing is undersized for high school, but it's not undersized based on building a multi-story high school. It's undersized based on all the other things that go on a high school campus.
So why can't the kids come over back from this way to go to football practice, etc.? We bought some back over here, or we have kids share cars, and we all come back this way.
So to answer your question, to answer your question, I don't think we're being good stewards of taxpayers' money to say we've got a good, great high school, a great principal, and we're going to build another high school.
No, we would shift it to the middle school, or, yeah, right, middle school. We shift everything else, so, FEF is K2, K1, and then FEF, well, just keep shifting up, so the high school then become a middle school, and then each level has a wing.
Yeah, I still don't know what we do with our high school students. And here's what I would encourage you all to do, like share with us your proposals, right? But again, it is not falling on deaf ears. And the only reason I'm even addressing this is because we talked about all of these things, right? We talked about new high school, we talked about construction on campus, we talked about all these things, and We could have put those proposals up there, but we had a feasibility study that told us not to do it, right, for all the reasons that Mr. Willingham had mentioned. And so that's one of the reasons that's not included in our three options. But that's something we could look at. But again, when you talk about building a new high school, the question would be, why are we building a new high school? You know, especially when we're looking at, we have capacity issues within our elementary school, and we're not, you know, it's like one of those things where if we're doing all this shifting, like, we still have to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. So what is the most sensible solution from elementary, middle, and high school?
So to that argument, then why are we building the middle school?
Yes, steward of taxpayers' dollars.
We're not building a new middle school. We're either building a new elementary, we're building a new middle school, or building a new elementary. Like, we're building a 1,200 student elementary, we're building a 1,400 student elementary, we're building a 1,600 student middle school. And so we've not said we're doing anything. We're saying these are the options, and here's the reasons why. The main, so I'll tell you this, the easy work would be, I inherited a 1,200 student elementary school. We could have ran it through the board, and we could have never looked back. And 2 years from now, if we're lucky, we'd be talking about capacity, right? And so we had to take a really hard look, and we're going to do this for every community as we move forward for new builds. We have to look at, where are we overcrowded? How are we going to solve capacity issues in elementary, middle, and high school? And so that's why we're here today, right? And so it's really to check all the boxes and ensure that once construction is completed in the town of Farragut, that you all are no longer at capacity.
With the exception of option one, I feel that the ninth graders in our community are kind of going to get short shift here. I have a current ninth grader and I have an 11th grader who bypassed the academy. With the introduction of the academy system in itself, there's been a lot of struggling with the change. A lot of the kids I know from current 10th graders and current 9th graders feel that they're just glorified middle school right now. And I feel that if we keep the 9th graders separate with their own academy, it just emphasizes their isolation more. My 9th grader last year took 2 high school level classes as an 8th grader here at the middle school. Where would, if he had had to travel to the high school to do that class, that could have been problematic. So I'm assuming that the academic parts will be covered. That's not really an issue, but I know we have intermediate school kids who come to the middle school and middle school kids who go to the high school. So depending on where all the schools are located, are we gonna have a bus to move kids around and get that covered? But more to my point, I think, is the socialization of the 9th graders. Academics are important, but Farragut's covered. You know, our kids do really well, and my kid does great academically, but one of the things that has been so wonderful for him as a freshman is Spirit Week, food trucks, football games, dances, all that kind of stuff. And he has a class right now, and he will have because of the way his schedule's worked out, he's actually gonna take a science class next semester with sophomores, possibly juniors in it, but it's outside of his freshman academy core class. So that builds on with what Megan was saying about the safety of my kid. I mean, I love my kid, but he's a goofball. Him walking a quarter mile and it's pouring rain or it's possibly snowing, it's not a good setup for him. You know, we're not setting them up for success in that manner. It's fine to say, well, now they're in high school, except for we're not really putting them into high school if we're keeping them separate. And part of what's helped him integrate into high school is that, when he sees the upperclassmen, they're like, hey, what's up, bro? You know, and they hang out and they chat at lunch and they do things after school together. He does after school activities with them. And how are we going to make sure they still all have all those opportunities? Because that's equally as important, maybe even sometimes more so than the academics for some of our kids.
So I will add, and again, I was an assistant principal in a freshman academy, and I was a principal in high school. We did not have a freshman academy. And so I'm a little biased because I see the benefits of a freshman academy. I wish we had it at Oak Ridge High School. But I will let Dr. Bartlett speak to exactly what his freshman academy looks like, how students access learning, how they're integrated in the culture.
I'm familiar with that because I have that happening now. My concern is if I have two coming up, two that are in the middle school right now, that with this schedule, one at least will be a ninth grader in the new, whatever we end up here. How will those kids, if they're sitting here at the middle school part of the academy or at the intermediate school part of the academy, how are those kids going to integrate into the academy, but into the high school as a whole? Because we're calling them high school, but we're really saying high school kind of pretend or like.
Well, that's what I was referring to.
high
That's
school
what I was going to
life.
ask Dr. Bartlett to speak to because you want to give him the microphone? Because he addressed this the other night. He addressed this in the first meeting.
I hate to be up here looking down on people, that's tacky. So if the freshmen are over here at the middle school, they'll be over here for their core classes, much like they're in the wing now. Their electives would still be at the high school. So yes, they'd have to walk between here and the high school, for PE, for band, for probably their science classes, make sure we have the lab space available. Those type of things that they're currently not taking in that freshman wing, that they're leaving that freshman wing currently for, going around to the high school, the art classes, the band classes, launch, those things. They would still be over there in the main building for that. Yes, it's going to be that quarter-mile walk between the two buildings, but that is still the plans. I don't have any plans for them to be isolated in this building. They would come over there. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
So are the classes gonna wait for them to get there? Are they gonna start later?
So there's a lot of logistical issues, and depending on what happens and all this stuff, and we're still a couple years away. In my previous school, which I won't name, like Baltimore, in my previous school, what we actually did with the CTE building was actually a quarter-mile away also. And so while the main building's on a 7-minute class change, the far away building is on a 10 or 11-minute class change. So they get out earlier and they walk, and they come back and have a few more minutes to get here. So it actually gives them a little bit more time to do so. So you got two different buildings on two slightly different bell schedules, so that gives them a longer time to change classes from this building to that building.
Okay, so I do have another question. How are we gonna know where they are at any point in time? Like, they could just wander off campus, somebody could wander onto campus, and there could be an issue.
So I will say this, and I said this earlier, 11 out of 15 of our students, high school students, and that's freshmen included, transition off campus every day. Security is one of my departments. We take great pride in our security. That's one of the reasons we are enhancing our fencing and all of the other things. And so that is something that it is. What I mean by that, it is a common thing in high schools that students transition from campus to campus.
Okay, so would you put a fence where they can only walk so that people can't get in or out of that fence?
We would look at any recommendations that the community had for us to do to enhance security, yes. And I will tell you, when we do security site visits, I take my chief of security, I take Mr. Shover, my director of facilities and new construction, and I take my, I think Ms. White is in here somewhere, showed up in her building. So we take a whole team out there and we basically look at the campus and see what the campus needs as far as security concerns.
So I'm a teacher at FIS. And I also have 3 middle schoolers, so I'm heavily invested in this conversation. My question is, if we go with option 2 or option 3, that are pretty much only increasing our elementary capacity by 43 students, right? And our portables are gone at that point, right, at the intermediate and the primary school? Or is that including our students at the portables?
So if you go with Would you like me to stay with option 2?
Sure, with option 2, what happened, the portables are no longer at the intermediate and the primary school?
That is correct, and so you would expand your intermediate to 1,400 students,
Right.
and then you would reduce the number at your primary, being K-5 elementary, and then you would have 500 freshman academy students, and so you've got tons of room for growth.
But my question is it only increases the expected capacity by 43 students, this plan. So my question is, what happens when at the elementary level, we have more than 43 students enrolled in than our current enrollment is, and we don't have any portables that we're putting them in, is our class size just gonna continue to increase? That's my question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
So when we've met our capacity, if we go with option 2, and our elementary school is at capacity at that point, it only allows for 43 more students than what our current capacity is, right?
So currently,
How many students, our current enrollment, I'm sorry, our current enrollment is?
2063 for K-5.
Okay.
so you got 1,600 middle school students, you've got,
I'm just talking elementary, I'm
no,
sorry, just elementary.
no, I'm going back to, here we go, let's do this. Okay, so currently you have 1,000 intermediate students, and then you have,
Our enrollment, I think, is higher, but just total elementary, we have a little over 2,000 students currently. Maybe, we might have more than that at the moment.
well, just if we were to look at just what we would have for an elementary school in the current intermediate / middle school, you would have, you start out with, currently right now you have 2,400 students in there, right? And so you would open up the school, if you just had the intermediate school and you had the freshman academy school, you'd have 1,900 students in there.
I'm not, Stephanie, do it, or?
So if you take your, the elementary capacity for option 2, you have 2106 for elementary kids. Those are the current numbers. Current numbers for that, removing portables. And if you add up FPS and FIS, as they sit right now, they're at 2063. So the difference between those two numbers is 43.
So you're building a school for 1,400 students, right?
For option 2.
I'm talking option 2.
Let's go back to option 2. All these options are running together.
So option 2, if we add the 706 students plus the 1,400 students, right, for the intermediate and for the existing primary, what is that number total?
I'll let my zoning man, he wants to speak to it.
So my department looks at this. So y'all are, let me restate the question, make sure I'm understanding. So y'all are concerned about, like, we do option 2, let's say, y'all are concerned about the number of seats we would have available as soon as
Yes,
construction.
as soon as we do this, we are probably already over capacity at our elementary schools in Farragut.
We don't want to go back to portables.
Yeah, exactly. No.
That's my
So-
concern, is it's not allowing for any growth in the elementary schools. And we have a huge push right now for the third grade retention law, and for, this is where kids are getting their foundational education. And so if we're already looking at an option that's gonna overcrowd our elementary schools, is that really the best thing for Farragut? Is my question.
And the reason I'm taking the mic for this one is my department also does projections. So like, we do the population for projections for all of our school sites and all of our school zones. So Dr. Adams alluded to it earlier, like we do have new construction in Farragut, like there is growth in Farragut, but if you think about like a growth curve, like you also start to look like more like this as opposed to looking like this. And part of that you can see if you just drive around, within the bounds of the town of Farragut, there's just not a lot of available land still. Like I'm not saying there's none, like there's still construction happening, but it is not on the scale of things that we see in other places.
Even with
So,
those
like,
new
we-
apartments? The new apartments,
Yeah,
where is
no,
that?
exactly. I'm not saying there's no construction whatsoever. I'm saying that the scale of that construction is not to the same degree as what we see in other parts of the county. Like, for example, Hardin Valley, or some of the things that we're starting to see in South Knoxville. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying that, like, these, the other thing to think about is, like, you all know this, like, as an elementary school teacher, we're talking 6th grades. So like the things that we see, kids are not just, students will be broken up amongst those 6 grades. So if you're talking 60 students across 6 grades, that's 10 kids per grade. One, and the size of a school like this, 1 per class. Like there are things that we can absorb at least some of this. We also, the biggest difference between like new construction like we're talking about here and the existing portables is this would be a design where like we have built out brand new. We're not talking about taking the teacher's lounge and turning it into a classroom. We're not talking about like the art teacher is now on a cart because her classroom is needed for instructional space. Like these would be classroom spaces. We would get back to that other stuff as well. You can essentially, I guess the point I'm trying to make is there's still a little bit of room to grow. There ought to be enough room to grow in these, in each of these plans to accommodate what we're seeing in our projections. And the quality of instruction that we can provide should be better in those spaces because you can use spaces for what they were designed for, not what we needed them for.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't want, for what you're saying, I don't want to spend $66 million for another 100 kids, roughly. I also understand from a perspective of being on the PTO, being on my HOA, welcoming in a 200 family community in my neighborhood. The turnover in my neighborhood is going from 70-year-old families to 30-year-old families with children coming in from everywhere else in the country to want to live right here in Farragut. So people want to live here and they want to enroll here. And I also volunteer in the school and I see all these new enrollments coming in. So they're coming in the numbers are going up, especially after fall break. So we've had a lot of new enrollments.
So we're gonna take one last question, but again, I think there is a huge misconception in this room. Okay, and so let me put my principal hat on. Where's Dr. Bartlett? He took off around for me. We are bringing the town of Farragut 3 options. If Garfield Adams, the Assistant Superintendent of Operations, built an elementary school for 1,200 kids, and y'all were at capacity in 2 years, you would say, what is wrong with him? That's the bottom line. Now, that's okay. I'm sure a lot of people say, what's wrong with him? I can live with that. What I can't live with is knowingly doing a construction project, putting a Band-Aid on something and moving forward, when we all know that we have to make a decision for the town of Farragut. With that being said, I'm not married to any idea. The reality of it is my children are grown. I'm an empty nester, right? And so I want to make the best decision for the town of Farragut. I don't have a preference. This is a community decision,
But
right?
can you tell us like how these are presented before the board? You just say you're tell us the next steps.
Oh, yeah, we take your input. When I say the town of Farragut, the people of the town of Farragut. Is that better? The community of the town of Farragut. No. I'm not going to call Mayor Williams and say, hey, Mayor Williams, give me an answer. Right? No, this is the community, the people of the town of Farragut. Your voice and choice matters. And I will tell you, and I'm a very transparent and honest person to a fault. And I will tell you, if this community says, Dr. Adams, I want you to build a 1,200 school elementary school, I'm going to do that. Right? But then we're going to have growing pains. And that's just the reality of it. Now, Mr. Trent may have serious issues with me, but at the end of the day, we do have to respect the wishes of the town of Farragut. But what I would ask you all to do is to really consider the middle school, the high school. Yes, there's growing pains with students transitioning from class to class outside, but that is the 11 out of 15 high schools we do that. And when I was director in Chattanooga, there were more than that, right? Like that's just the reality of where we are. We are booming in East Tennessee, right? And so we don't have any land, so we have to be creative, right? And so this is just creative. Again, I want you all to understand One of the reasons why the middle school was an option to be built out, because they only have certain grade levels. Like, they're not going to be booming like our elementary schools. They don't have a big span of grade levels, right? So it's easy to say we can account for 200 additional students and say they're good, they won't be at capacity, right? That's easy. And that's why that was an option. And we wanted more flexibility with our elementary schools. So I will say this, and I'll take your question. You all brought great points tonight. Your input is invaluable, right? And again, being a former principal at an elementary, I'm sorry, I've never at elementary, middle school and high school, like, I appreciate this and I understand it, and we need your input to make a sound decision. And so when we go before the board, next steps, we're going to share this information. This is what the community said. We're going to share that information. The community said this, the community said they want that, and then we'll move forward with a sound decision.
So should we email you?
Never. You can email me if you want to, but our chief of communications, Ms. Harrington,
Fill out the survey.
yeah, that's her department, with our research department, they're going to work on that data and pull that together, and then we'll bring that before the board and move forward. But I do want you all to understand, like, a decision has not been made. I can assure you a decision has not been made. It would also be easy to say, hey, I made this decision, but I know how important it is to get the input of the community and parents especially, right? You all are pouring in this community, you pour in your children, and we want to support you all best we can. So that's why this meeting is important. The decision has not been made. I cannot reiterate that enough. We have not made a decision. This is an input meeting for us to make a sound decision.
So what's the next step? When is the possible decision being made?
We will bring forth a proposal to the board in January. Hopefully.
Is that like open to the public?
Oh, all board meetings are open, yes, absolutely.
I wanted to, before I throw this out, wanted to make sure that I'm understanding, because what I'm looking at, it looks like none of these options actually address increasing all the levels from elementary to middle and high school. We either have to, in these options, we have to pick either we increase the elementary and the middle and high stay where they are, we roughly leave the elementary where they are and the middle and high school, or we increase elementary and high school but leave the middle alone.
Options 2 and 3 check all the boxes. Well, option 1, it checks the boxes for elementary. Because option 1 is only just to build an elementary school. Yes, but Dr. Bartlett would say, you've done nothing for the high school.
So what I was going to do, I know we had over here, you all had like plan, I think it was 1B. So I wanted to see if I could throw out a plan 2B. And if it's something you all had considered, which was doing option 2, but instead of making them K through 5, making them K through 4, and the new middle school, which has got 1,600, making that 5th through 8th, and that then alleviates all 3 levels, or helps with the growth of capacity for all 3 levels.
So we currently have research looking at how they chop up grades, and there is a reason, and the reason is because of learning loss, and like peers is the reason how they group students together. And there was a suggestion at one of our meetings of clumping grades, and Maryville had a similar model. Maryville's going away from that model, and they're going back to the traditional model of what we do. So it is a research-based reason why we don't change up the grade levels for elementary, middle, and high school.
I know that we're getting ready to close out, so I just wanted to say, again, I've said this before, I know that our community does appreciate the fact that the overcrowding in the schools is being addressed. I know that our community appreciates that we've been looking for land, trying to be able to build a new school. We definitely appreciate all of you all and all of your hard work and the studies and the data and all of those things. What I was going to ask you kind of addressed a moment ago, but I'll just say from having attended both board meetings downtown and from having attended all 3 of these community meetings, I think it's fair to say we've got 3 options that have been presented to us, and as a community, nobody's going, ooh, this option, we want this one, and jumping up and down. It's very obvious that so far from what we've heard from the community that none of these options are satisfactory, none of these options seem to be the winner. So I think it's fair to say that we're all hopeful and eager to see what's going to come from all of this, that we all hope and pray that we'll be seen and heard, because innately how God made us is that we want to be seen and heard by everyone, and that we really want to feel as if our community and our words and our hearts and our visions are really being taken into consideration. So I'm, as a mom of a 1st grader and a 4th grader, kids that will still be at Farragut schools and impacted by this decision, as somebody that attended Farragut K through 12, I'm excited and hopeful to see what's going to come from this, what considerations will be taken, the various options that members of the community have presented. Maybe there's a way that, somehow all of this will inspire something else that'll really just resonate with us further.
I appreciate that, and I will tell you all this, you all are, you're not the exception to the rule, right? I've been in education for 23 years, and I've lived through new bills, rezoning, the whole nine, and it is always mixed emotions. I have never been a part of a new bill where everyone was like, yeah, because it's like, yeah, I want a new school, but here's how I feel about whatever, right? And so it is the norm, right? And so I say all that to say, I understand, I hear you, right? And your feelings are real, and they're acknowledged, and we certainly need your input. So I understand, 100% understand. I just want you all to understand, like, we do not have an answer. We need your input, and that will drive a lot of the decisions that we're going to make moving forward. We will be here for a little while. It's already 6:50. We're a little over time. I didn't want to go ahead and give you all additional time to get some of the questions you needed because this is the last listening session. And again, in January, we'll be at the board meeting to present a proposal. And you all can reach out directly to your board members. If you don't like the proposal, then I would suggest that you reach out to your board member, Ms. Warren, or the school board as a whole, and express your feelings, concerns, suggestions, and so forth. But that's where we are currently, and I'm excited for the town of Farragut. I'm excited for you all to have a brand new school, whatever it may be. Thank you.